The news hit like a thunderclap, and within minutes it was dominating every screen in America. According to multiple reports, a federal judge had issued an immediate arrest order against Donald Trump. This was not a routine filing or a decision. Buried in legal paperwork, it was a live, urgent order with real-time consequences. On George Will Insight, we've covered countless legal battles surrounding Trump. But this moment felt fundamentally different. The speed alone sent shockwaves through political circles and media newsrooms across the country. Inside Mar-a-Lago, the reaction was instant and chaotic. Aides rushed through hallways, phones rang non-stop, and senior advisors scrambled to get clarity on what was happening. Sources described a sudden shift in atmosphere, from controlled confidence to visible tension. Trump himself was reportedly stunned, pacing through his private quarters, demanding updates, and trying to understand how events were moving so fast. For a man known for dominating the narrative and delaying outcomes, this sudden loss of control was jarring. Legal advisors gathered quickly, reviewing every line of the court order. On George Will Insight, analysts noted that the language reportedly left very little room for delay. The order outlined immediate expectations, and failure to comply could trigger enforcement without warning. Lawyers coordinated with banks, accountants, and security teams, knowing that even a minor mistake could escalate the situation. The pressure was immense, and the clock was already ticking. Outside Mar-a-Lago, the political world reacted in real time. Republican lawmakers, many of whom had long aligned themselves closely with Trump, were suddenly forced to confront a reality they had rarely faced. Their party's most powerful figure was under immediate legal pressure. Some lawmakers privately expressed concern about how this would affect public trust, governance, and upcoming elections. Others focused on survival, calculating whether public loyalty or quiet distance would best protect their careers. The internal divide within the GOP was no longer hidden. It was happening live. Media coverage exploded. Television networks interrupted scheduled programming, and online platforms filled with breaking alerts, leaked documents, and instant commentary. On George Will Insight, the focus turned to the unprecedented speed of the order. Analysts emphasized that this was not a drawn-out legal fight. There was no extended negotiation window, no comfortable buffer of time. This was a ticking clock scenario, and the nation was watching it unfold minute by minute. Public reaction intensified the moment even further. Trump supporters flooded social media, framing the order as a politically motivated attack and warning of dangerous precedent. Critics responded just as quickly, pointing to the seriousness of judicial authority and the idea that no individual, even a former president, is above the law. Political analysts across the spectrum acknowledged the historic nature of the situation. Never before had a former president faced such immediate legal enforcement in real time. As the first critical phase unfolded, it became clear that Trump's legal, political, and personal worlds had collided into one high-stakes crisis. Every movement inside Mar-a-Lago was now under scrutiny. Every potential statement carried risk. On George Will Insight, it was clear that what happened next would not only shape Trump's future, but could send lasting shockwaves through the Republican Party and the broader American political system. This was no longer just a legal story. It was a defining moment. With the eyes of the nation fixed on Mar-a-Lago and the pressure mounting by the hour, the sense of uncertainty was unmistakable. The clock was ticking, the stakes were historic, and American politics had entered territory it had never seen before. As the second phase of the crisis unfolded, the pressure surrounding Donald Trump intensified dramatically. Inside Mar-a-Lago, what had begun as shock quickly transformed into relentless urgency. Advisors huddled in private rooms, reviewing updates by the minute, while legal counsel moved between calls with federal authorities, financial institutions, and security teams. On George Will Insight, analysts described the situation as a rare convergence of law, politics, and real-time enforcement, something modern American politics had never truly experienced. Trump's legal team worked around the clock, searching for emergency options. Appeals, temporary stays, and injunctions were all discussed. But the immediacy of the court order left almost no room to maneuver. Sources indicated that compliance was no longer theoretical. It was happening in real time. Financial accounts were monitored, sensitive documents were secured, and enforcement mechanisms were already in motion. Every delay carried risk, and every action was being watched. Trump himself reportedly oscillated between defiance and calculation. He demanded constant updates, questioned advisors aggressively, and insisted on shaping public messaging personally. On George Will Insight, attention turned to how unusual this moment was for Trump. For decades, he had thrived on controlling chaos, stretching timelines, and turning controversy into advantage. Now, timing worked against him. Every hour mattered, and hesitation could have immediate consequences. The political fallout became impossible to ignore. Republican lawmakers faced mounting pressure from all sides. Some issued carefully worded statements emphasizing respect for due process while stopping short of outright support. Others doubled down on loyalty, warning that any distancing would fracture the party's base. Behind closed doors, emergency meetings revealed growing tension. Lawmakers in swing districts worried that public alignment with Trump could alienate undecided voters, while hardline supporters demanded unwavering allegiance. Media coverage escalated to a near-constant stream of breaking news. Cameras focused on Mar-a-Lago, analysts dissected every development, and headlines emphasized the historic nature of the enforcement. On George Will Insight, commentators highlighted how the speed of events was reshaping public perception. This was no longer about speculation or future consequences. The impact was immediate, visible, and unfolding live before the nation. Public reaction mirrored the intensity. Trump supporters rallied across social media, framing the enforcement as a political assault and calling it a threat to democracy. Critics countered with arguments about accountability and the rule of law, emphasizing that no individual, regardless of status, should be immune from judicial authority. The country appeared deeply divided, not just over Trump, but over what this moment represented for American governance. Security concerns also rose sharply. Federal and local law enforcement agencies reportedly coordinated closely to monitor potential unrest. Protests were discussed, threats assessed, and protective measures reinforced around key locations. On George Will Insight, experts noted that enforcing a court order against a former president required an unprecedented balance of firmness and restraint. Any miscalculation could escalate tensions nationwide. As hours turned into days, the psychological toll inside Mar-a-Lago became apparent. Advisors spoke of exhaustion, constant recalculation, and an awareness that history was being written in real time. Trump's public statements grew sharper, designed to energize his base and portray strength, while carefully avoiding language that could worsen his legal position. Each message was scrutinized not only by supporters and critics, but by legal experts analyzing potential consequences. Within the Republican Party, fractures widened. Some leaders quietly acknowledged that the situation could redefine the party's future. Loyalty to Trump had long been a unifying force, but now it carried risks that could no longer be ignored. On George Will Insight, analysts emphasized that this moment forced Republicans to confront a fundamental question. Was the party tied to one individual or to broader principles of law and governance? By the end of this phase, one reality was undeniable. Trump was navigating a pressure cooker unlike anything he had faced before. Legal compliance, political survival, public perception, and national stability were all colliding at once. Every move carried weight. Every decision had consequences that extended far beyond Mar-a-Lago. This was no longer just Trump's battle. It was a defining test for American institutions, political loyalty, and the limits of power. As George Will Insight continues to follow this unfolding story, one thing is clear. The outcome of this moment will echo far beyond a single court order, shaping the future of the Republican Party and the nation itself.